Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me this week for another episode of the podcast. My guest this week is Shoshana Cantwell, and she runs the Etsy shop Rhoda and Dot Studio, where she sells custom watercolor pet portraits and original art. Shoshana, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Ijama. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I am too, because I know you have an interesting story, and I can't wait to just learn all about how you ended up where you are right now. But before we get into it, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your artwork on Etsy?
Sure. So my name's Shoshana. I am a watercolor artist, and I mostly sell watercolor pet portraits. I started on Etsy in the summer of 2020. So it's a pandemic story. And I was working in the entertainment business before I started on Etsy as a talent agent, and a totally different lifestyle. So there's a lot to the story, and I'm sure you'll have some questions, but I basically found myself onto Etsy mid last year and started selling watercolor art, and it's been really fun. And now I'm here and excited to take on 2021.
Yeah. How did you start painting, or when did you start painting and develop an affinity for specifically pet portraits is what you started out doing on Etsy at least?
So I've been a watercolor hobbyist only since 2018. And I really picked it up as a way to de-stress and find something to. I worked a really high pressure job, and I felt like I needed something to distract myself from the high pressure work that I was doing at the time. And I actually was doing like one of those watercolor kits where they send you a bunch of paint and they send you the paper and they do these tutorials. And it was so fun. And it was really one of the only things that I really look forward to on the weekends when I was, decompressing from work. So I started doing that. And then when the pandemic hit, I found myself working from home and also working in an industry that was almost completely shut down because of the pandemic. I had so much time. And that's when I started painting pets in particular. And what I was doing was on my social media, asking my family and friends if they would help me learn how to paint pets by providing images of their pets. So I would have family and friends send me their pets. I would paint them badly, and then I would paint them a little bit better. And I eventually started offering them to friends and family for $20 per portrait. And then that sort of ballooned into painting them on Etsy. So it really started as very much a hobby, not something I was good at or trained at, but something I very much enjoyed.
Yeah. So let's talk about that time during the pandemic. Prior to that, your job was already stressful to you. Like you said, this is what you look forward to on the weekends. And I think a lot of sellers can relate to just finding solace and peace in their craft from everything else going on in their life. But then right during the pandemic was when you decided to leave your job and focus on just growing a business centered around your artwork. Did you have any concerns about doing that at such just an uncertain time in the economy where, most people were trying to hold on to what they could because of the uncertainty, and you kind of went the other way?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I when you put it like that, I don't know why I did it. It was probably a really bad idea. But no, it was kind of one of those things where a lot of things happening in my life made me feel like the right move was to leave my job. And then it was just a matter of what I was going to do. I mean, the reality was, and still is in the entertainment business, that so many folks are out of work anyway, that I didn't really have many choices. There wasn't work for me anyway in the entertainment business. So it made it a little bit easier to leave because I was working in a commission-based job. So if there was no work in New York City for actors, then there was really no work for me. So while I sort of had a job, I also didn't really have a job.
Okay.
So it became easier for me to just cut ties with the agency that I was working with.
Okay.
However, it was a big risk, and it's not one that I would necessarily recommend anyone do. I don't know if I would recommend to myself to do it if I were giving myself advice.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of it was just treating what I was doing like a business from the very start. So not just saying I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to paint all day. It was very much about, okay, what are the steps I need to take here? What can I do every day to build this business? Knowing that I have a privilege and a luxury right now of all this time that I've never had before, when I can really start working on something. So once I did make the decision to pivot, it very quickly became a very focused strategic process of, what do I need to do to build a business that has some momentum and that will be able to grow.
Yeah. So fortunately, you had, when you first started your Etsy shop, you mentioned you looked at it as a business from the very beginning. On the other side, while you were working, were there things that you were doing to prepare yourself to leave and just fully become a business person?
Not really. I part of my previous job, I was very focused on building productivity systems for myself that allowed me to manage a huge number of clients in my agency.
Okay.
And I was just really focused on optimizing the way that I worked. So I just sort of carried over my system of doing things into the watercolor business. I think that was sort of the mindset shift. It was like, okay, I'm going to shift my focus from marketing, 400 actors, and I'm just going to focus on myself as an artist. So I just sort of made that shift, and I ended up, shifting a lot of those productivity methods over to the artwork in a way that didn't really feel like I had to completely start from scratch, even though it was a totally different industry and, of course, different things to learn. I tried to use the skills that I had and kind of move them over to Etsy, if that makes sense.
It does. So same skills, different commodity, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. I think sometimes when people think about making that move, because coming onto Etsy and the into a creative business, sometimes we think that skills are not always transferable,
Right.
but you're saying actually your skills were very transferable. You just had to make some mindset shifts as far as what you were focusing on.
Right. And a big part, the hardest part is learning to think of yourself as an artist. And to be honest, that's still something I find really hard because I've always been somebody who is very focused on tasks and productivity and a lot of the business side of things. And I'm sure so many Etsy sellers feel this way, but there's a lot of the imposter syndrome. And am I good enough to do this? Am I experienced enough to do this?
Yeah.
And the answer is always no, but that's no reason not to do it,
Yeah.
And, everyone feels that way.
Absolutely. I know every time I start to, set up to record another podcast episode, I'm like, oh my goodness, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You have no idea how to have a conversation with this person you've never talked to. And so I think we all struggle with that in areas.
And that's the reason why we should all be doing what we're doing. Because if you don't have that feeling during your day of that a feeling of like, should I be doing this? Am I good enough? Like that's really what propels you to keep trying. So
Yeah.
I try to chase that feeling, I suppose, as much as I can.
Yeah. So you picked Etsy, but you also have your own e-commerce store. And for anyone who wants to check it out, first of all, Shoshana's Etsy shop is Rhoda and Dot Studio, and
Mm-hmm.
spell out the and, and her website is rhodaanddot.com.
Mm-hmm.
So did you start both at the same time, or did you launch your Etsy shop and then build your website?
No, so I launched the Etsy shop first in June of last year, and then
Okay.
I only launched my website through Shopify this month, so
Oh,
very
okay.
recently. Yeah.
And is there a reason that you decided to branch out? Most sellers kind of wait I shouldn't say most, a lot wait for a while before they branch out and get really comfortable on Etsy. But is there a reason that you decided to br- uh, branch out sooner rather than later?
Yeah, that's a good question. I felt particularly with customized products that there were certain features of Etsy that I would really like to have
Mm.
that don't exist. And I have been sort of imagining what a checkout process would look like on my own website for people who are purchasing a pet portrait that would allow them to upload a picture through their checkout process, to type in the name of the pet, and like a bunch of little features that I couldn't make work on Etsy.
Mm.
So that was the primary reasons I really wanted a couple extra features. But also I felt like when I do the work outside of Etsy to generate business and to find folks who want to buy pet portraits,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to take them to my own place, you
Yeah.
know? So I really focus on Etsy being like generating customers who are already on Etsy. But if folks find me on Instagram or through a Google search, I'd like to take them into my own space. So that was really the reason. I actually didn't know that other folks waited. I just kind of was like, let's do it. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the wait isn't necessarily intentional. It's just
Right.
because it's so easy to get on Etsy and start selling. And once you
Totally.
gather momentum, it's easy to just stay in that, keep your momentum. It takes,
Right.
a different type of inertia to say, okay, I'm going to set my own platform up and
Right.
everything that goes along with that. Now, when you were
Right.
setting yours up, did you know anything about how you were going to drive traffic? Did you have a plan for driving traffic there, or it was more so about being able to offer more than
Hmm.
what you could on Etsy?
Sure. So I really did want to be able to control my Google ads in a more hands-on
Mm,
way.
yeah.
And it's just much easier to do that with Shopify. Though I really enjoy the Etsy ads feature actually, and it has been very helpful to my business.
Mhm.
I like to know where stuff's coming from, and it that definitely attracted me in creating a Shopify store so I can really be more hands-on with the Google ads process.
So, did you start advertising from day one?
On Etsy?
No, I'm using Google Ads for
Oh,
Shopify.
yes, I did. Yeah.
Wow. You
Yeah.
just went all guns blazing.
You know, I think why not?
Yeah.
Especially because the particular product that I create, which is a why it has worked out really well for me so far,
Mhm.
is the costs are extremely low for me. Um,
Okay.
and so I can create, custom pet portraits, and people are willing to buy them at the price they're willing to buy them at. And I have more room to play around with than maybe somebody who has a lot of suppliers that
Yeah.
they that eat into their profits. So for me, I have a little room to play with ad money, and I figure why not, go for it.
Yeah. And so have you found that focusing first on Google Ads has paid off as opposed to the slower the slower burn of, and I don't mean burn in a bad way. I mean,
Sure.
maybe I shouldn't say burn, but the slower buildup of traffic from SEO?
It's really hard to tell at this point because my shop only launched this month, so I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
really analyze it. So it's hard to say, to be honest,
Okay.
at this point, but it'll be interesting to see.
Okay. How did you learn about how to run Google Ads and set up campaigns and just how to target them to the right people?
Yeah, I just Googled it.
I love it.
No, I just sort of trying to learn as I go.
Yeah.
And it's pretty actually very user friendly. Though I'm sure it's going to require some tweaking after I give it a little bit time to see how it works.
Yeah.
But so far I really think the Google Ads platform is very easy to operate and fairly intuitive.
Okay. I've never run actual ads. I've set up campaigns, but I've set them up to do keyword research, which is really off topic from what we're talking about. but yes, it does seem really self-explanatory. But yes. I know that, like, I've seen on YouTube videos where people go really in depth with analytics and, you know, analyzing, you know, like different spikes, and so you know when and where to, you know, advertise and all whatnot. I didn't get into all that, but to set up a very simple and basic, uncomplicated campaign seemed, like you said, really straightforward and easy to figure out.
Yes.
So what does a typical day look like for you, and how do you split your time between managing your Etsy shop and then also managing your own e-commerce site?
So they really kind of fold in together. My primary task during the day, of course, is painting the pet portrait orders that I receive. So I usually load those to the front part of my day, and I will usually work on 2 or 3 per day, and I'll rotate through them fairly quickly. So I'll work on one portrait for like 45 minutes. I'll do another portrait for 45 minutes, and then maybe another one. Then I'll cycle back through. And then once I feel like I'm maybe 90% done with my portraits, then I will do business stuff in the afternoon. So it's very much like I batch my time out. And then I'll package portraits up in the early afternoon. And then in the late afternoon, I will manage various business tasks and emails and such. But I definitely rely on I use a system called ClickUp. Have you ever heard of them before?
I have heard of that. Yes.
It's very good.
Is it?
Yes. And I use it to manage all of my commissions and my pet portrait orders. And it's a great way to really build in a system so you know what's going on. So that's sort of my life, is opening up my ClickUp, looking at the board of all the things I have to do and all the tasks, and then just cycling through those and then dealing with everything else as it comes up.
Okay. And just to be clear, ClickUp, is it similar to Trello and Asana?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So for anyone who doesn't know, those are all, would you say, productivity management tools?
Right, that's right.
Yes. So they help you basically decide what you need to do and when, and then you can keep track of things. And I know with some of them, I haven't used ClickUp, so I don't know it too well. I only recently just opened a ClickUp account, but I haven't been in it because I was trying to get organized, and that's how disorganized I am. I got the account and then I moved on.
Right.
But it helps you organize your tasks, and it helps to keep you on track.
Totally. And it's really affordable. ClickUp is free up to a certain amount of storage. And then if you want to upgrade, it's $5 a month. So it's really affordable. I think it's more affordable than some of the other alternatives, and it works just as well.
I think so too.
Yeah. And so it's been really, I definitely recommend. And the one thing I'll say is especially with commissions, it's so helpful to set up a system for yourself where you know what's going on and you're tracking your orders as they come through. And Etsy, unfortunately, doesn't quite have that kind of system to sort of move your orders through a workflow, at least in the way that I need it. So a system like ClickUp has been really very helpful.
And so does ClickUp also help you with payment collections or reminders?
You can definitely set up reminders. It doesn't do anything for you. I mean, it just tells you what you've got, what you're tracking.
Okay.
But for each order, I have like all the info that I keep, you know, what type of portrait they've ordered, whether or not it's a gift, what the gift message. So I really import all the data I have about every single order into that system to make it easier to track the life cycle of a specific portrait.
Okay. So do you use ClickUp on a daily basis just to know what needs to get done, or only when you're doing commissioned artwork?
For everything. Yeah, for most tasks that I use, I'll run them through ClickUp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How long did it take you to get set up and just comfortable in the system?
Maybe a couple weeks. Just to get my handle on it, but I really use it in a fairly limited way, or like I figured out what works for me and then I just sort of do the same thing over and over again. So it's very much like just a very seamless workflow that I move things through on there.
Okay. When you do commissioned work, do you send your clients to Etsy for checkout, or to rhodaanddot.com for checkout?
So rhodaanddot.com has the same features as my Etsy shop. In fact, it's got a little bit more. So definitely we'll send folks to my personal website for the commissions, but the same, you know, Etsy will do the same thing. And if someone wants to order a pet portrait on Etsy, they'll just like message me the photo. Whereas on my own website, I've created a system for them to upload their pet portrait, their picture for their pet portrait on the website. And also I something that means a lot to me that I was able to do on my own website is to create a like an automatic donation to the Humane Society when people buy a pet portrait order. And that's been really cool. So I definitely love people going to that website so I can make sure that that automatic donation gets deducted from their order.
Oh, so how does it work? Do they pay and then a portion comes out of their payment in the checkout page, or do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No. Yeah. So it's an app called Shopping Gives that you can add to your Shopify store, and I think that what it does is it displays on the checkout page how much of their order is going to whatever charity you choose, but then it's billed back to me. So it doesn't come automatically out of their purchase, but I think monthly I get billed for whatever that number is for each purchase.
Okay. And then does the app also handle transferring the funds to the charities of your choice?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And yes, you're right. That's something you probably couldn't do on Etsy, at least not right now.
Yeah, not right now.
I know that for people who sell on eBay has a system where you can donate a portion of your sales to a charity.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's a nice incentive or it gives you an easy way to support charities that you believe in.
Right. Of course. Yeah. That's awesome.
How long did it take for you to figure out what the right pricing for your products were? And are you comfortable with where they are right now?
Yeah. It took a little while. I think a lot of it was assessing, you know, there's a big market of, I mean, perhaps it's a relatively small niche, but within the niche, there are a lot of pet portrait artists on Etsy. So first step was trying to gauge what their prices were. At the start, I priced them significantly lower. And I just raised my prices in the new year. And now they're more or less the same as the other pet portrait artists on Etsy. So it's really just based on what others are selling them for. That's really my primary metric. Yeah.
Okay. And I see that now you also offer digital downloads. What went into your decision to start offering digital downloads? And do you feel like you might be competing against yourself by doing that?
Of my art prints?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, the digital downloads were some of the first things that I listed. And I had thought there would be more of an interest in them. And I have this one botanical artwork that I offer as a digital download that was really like selling like crazy when I first started on Etsy. But what I found was that it cost $2.50 for folks to buy. And I felt like putting a lot of energy into the digital downloads or creating more of the digital downloads might be time better spent on the pet portraits, which are priced significantly higher. So I ended up stopping with creating new digital downloads, so I still offer them. But they're great. I mean, they're just something that people keep buying, and it doesn't require any work.
Yes, and I think if you look, especially right now, if you go to YouTube and look up, or even if you search in Google, what can I sell on Etsy, or things to make and sell on Etsy, you'll definitely feel like you're missing out if you're not doing anything digital and printable. Because it's hot right now.
Yes, totally. I kind of felt, this whole process for me is, especially with figuring out what to paint, because that's the area I just knew least about. Eventually it became clear that painting animals was the thing that really like brought me joy and made me feel good. So I decided that really shifting into that, I found it very easy to get caught up in the trends of like, when you Google it or when you go on YouTube and you say, what do I sell on Etsy? And you're like, okay, well, I guess I got to listen to this person who says the best thing for me to do is sell digital downloads. But I feel pretty strongly that that your passion should lead what you do. And I found that creating these prints for Etsy, it just sort of didn't fill me up in the same way as it would painting animals. So I actually try to stay away from like those recommendations about what to sell on Etsy, because I found that it sort of distracted me from what I actually want to do. And so for that reason, I sort of moved my focus away from digital downloads.
And I know I hear you and I understand, and I like that you came to the realization quickly that you needed to focus on what you were passionate about, because I tell you, I've fallen for everything. I've done the digital downloads, I've done the SVG files, I've done the embroidery, patterns, all that. And yes, after a while, you feel like you're chasing every trend, when in actuality, if you really listen to your own intuition and figure out what you really enjoy, I think that's when people hit their stride, and things really start to click and fall into place and make sense.
Well, finding a niche is of course super important. I mean, if you're painting something or you're creating something that you're super passionate about but no one is interested, then ultimately you have to listen to that feedback. But I think there's a difference between being like, all right, well, everyone's making these SVG files and everyone's selling these digital downloads, so I guess I'll do that.
Yes.
It's definitely finding that balance between something that you really love and are passionate about, and then finding a niche that you can stand out within, and something that you can, somewhere that you'll get a little bit of attention and traction.
Yeah. So let's talk about social media. Because I always like to talk about what people are doing on social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're on Facebook and Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of the two, right now, where do you feel that you get, oh, maybe not feel. I always hear, whenever I say that, I hear Judge Judy. I love Judge Judy. And I think I like her. And she always says, I don't care about your feelings, I care about facts. So
right.
where do you get the most engagement between those two platforms? Because I know they're kind of similar in some ways, but then not so.
Sure. So I'm still working on my social media to the point where I feel like it's really benefiting my business. Facebook has actually been better for me with sales, and Instagram has been a little bit better for engagement. What I do on Facebook is I share a lot in like community groups in my neighborhood, and use those to drive people to my business. And that has been very helpful. Instagram has been really great for shouting out customers and sharing their pet portrait orders and showing them off to their friends. And usually what they'll do is share it to their stories, and then that drives a little bit of interest. So I use an app called Tailwind for Instagram. And that helps me schedule out my posts. So I try to just dedicate like 30 minutes a week to Instagram and Facebook. I'll schedule out my posts and I'll just let them run. And try not to give social media too much of my time, because I know it can become sort of like a black hole of attention. So it's not a huge focus for me, but it's something I try to automate as much as possible so I stay active without becoming too obsessive over engagement on Instagram, when I feel like it often doesn't translate to sales.
Yeah. So on Facebook, are you primarily hanging out in the Facebook marketplace? Is that where the sales are coming from, or are they coming from your page?
So what I do on Facebook, what I did most recently is join community groups in my neighborhood and then share my business there. And I feel like people are really excited to support local businesses. So that tends to work really well. So that's my primary focus on Facebook, is just sort of sharing regularly in my community groups and folks who I know in my neighborhood, and driving them to Etsy from there. Okay.
And then also, I know I saw on rhodaand.com, you have a blog as well. How do you decide what you're going to talk about on your blog? Do you do a lot of keyword research, or do you primarily just do interest pieces, articles, or write about things that are of interest to you and not necessarily for the keyword to pull in traffic?
Right. So it's kind of a mixture of both. I mean, it's very new because I just launched the website. It's primarily keywords. And just trying to drive people to the site, but also things that I feel would be helpful to my customers, like how to protect your watercolor artwork so it doesn't fade. And I also have like a gift guide for pet lovers. So trying to build out content that means something to people, but also that will drive people to the site. So it's definitely a mixture of both of those things.
Okay. Now, regarding what you sell, is other than the digital downloads and the art prints, the pet portraits, are they all custom, or do you ever just draw like animal portraits that don't belong to anyone? So non-custom pets?
No non-custom pets, all totally custom. What I'm hoping to do is create some sort of semi-custom product that will require a little bit less hands-on work. So that's definitely on my list. I know that there are other artists on Etsy, for example, who will draw like every breed, and then people can buy the breed that their dog matches. But I love mutts, so it doesn't work so well for me.
I love mutts too.
Yeah.
I think they have the best personalities.
Right. And they're the cutest for
They
sure.
are.
So no, it's fully custom, and honestly, that's the biggest challenge of this work. And I mean, I know so many artists on Etsy and makers create custom
Yeah.
work made to order, but it really does take up a ton of time,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a challenge to find balance between working on your custom orders and then growing the business and then coming up with ideas for products that might be a little bit more passive or that will still sell. So my goal actually is to create a calendar for 2022 of pet portraits that I've painted.
Okay.
And maybe like a mutts of the world type thing
I like that.
that I can sell for 2022. So trying to use the pet portraits that I've already painted into a new product.
Yeah. What do you think, Shoshana, that it would take for you to feel more comfortable raising your prices because of the amount of effort that goes into creating custom work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I think for me, I'm kind of, it would be experience. I feel like being such a new seller on Etsy, it's important to make sure that my prices reflect, my level of experience. So at this point, I'm hoping to raise my prices, to reevaluate my prices every 6 months.
Okay.
And then move from there. But yeah, it's a very difficult thing to figure out what to do for sure.
Yeah.
And when to look at that and when to raise them.
Yes. Yeah, because I feel like, with the amount of effort that goes into creating custom work, that right there, I think already puts you into a higher price range.
Yeah.
And then there's your time and all that. And so I'm glad at least it's on your radar to keep reassessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was it starting your shop off on Etsy during the pandemic, and just did you prepare for Etsy? How did you educate yourself to really be successful on the platform?
Mm-hmm. So I was a really enthusiastic Etsy customer for many years. So I did know a lot about the platform just as a user. And I felt like it gave me a sense of what I wanted my shop to look like and what I enjoyed about Etsy and, what I would want to utilize. So I sort of had some ideas in my mind for quite some time before I transitioned over to Etsy. But really, for me, I very much learned by just doing. Yeah. So I didn't do too much preparing, but once I decided I was going to do it, I was like, all right, this is what I need to do. I did fall prey to a course on how to, to have an Etsy shop that I felt maybe was a little bit too expensive.
That is such an interesting phrase, fall prey. Okay.
I mean, I think that some of those courses are extremely helpful to folks, and there were some nuggets that really helped me in launching my shop. But I do feel like I think one of the great things about the Etsy platform is that it is extremely intuitive. And once you sort of make your way through and then you do enough research on other Etsy shops that you enjoy and that you think are laid out well, like you can really sort of find your way. And I felt like most of what I was able to accomplish on Etsy, I was able to do just by sort of intuitively working my way through the setup process on the site. Yeah. So I didn't necessarily feel like I needed too much like guidance when it comes to setting it up. Definitely the SEO game requires a little bit of strategy that you have to sort of work through and learn. But a lot of it was just sort of fiddling with it and learning as I went.
Yeah. Question: did you finish the entire course?
No.
Okay.
So I paid. Yeah, no, I paid for a course that was like a couple $100, and it. I think there's so much great resources about how to set up an Etsy shop and what to sell on YouTube, that I felt like a lot of those resources were just as helpful, if not more helpful, than the courses that I was seeing. Yeah. So it kind of felt like it was not super beneficial to me, but maybe for others, those types of resources are really great. Just for me, it didn't really add much benefit to what I was doing.
Okay. What features would you say, since you're still relatively new on the platform, for other sellers that are new, who might be listening to this, what features will you say you found to be the most useful for you?
Sure. So on Etsy?
Yeah.
Okay. I really love the Teams feature.
Oh, nice.
I love to use Teams. I think it's really nice to have a community on Etsy where you can interact with others and also encourage each other. So I would engage in a bunch of communities, and I found that really helpful. A bunch of teams. I really like Etsy ads, and I thought it was a really, easy to use feature, and it worked well for my business. And yeah, I think that's really what worked for me on Etsy, is utilizing Teams and taking advantage of Etsy ads.
That's so great, because it's been a long time since anyone has talked about using Teams and being a part of the teams. And I know, I think it was last week, Etsy sent out an email about Teams, and they're revamping the whole Teams platform. And
that's right.
Yeah. So how did you go about finding the teams that you joined and figuring out which ones you wanted to be a part of and really engage with?
Right. So the one I was engaging most with is called Art. It's just for people who are artists on Etsy. And that's probably the team that I engage with the most. And it's really very focused on folks favoriting each other's work on social media and on Etsy. Really, it was just, finding shops that felt, teams that felt like they fit in with the sort of interest that I have on Etsy. It's really very easy to navigate the team system if you scroll through and just see what looks good and what looks interesting.
Okay. On the flip side, what have been the hardest things for you to figure out as a newer seller? What have been the hardest things for you to just grasp and figure out how to do well?
Yeah. Well, this is not necessarily an Etsy specific problem, but I think for me, it's been figuring out with this particular product, with my pet portraits. When I first started on Etsy, I would sell prints of my artwork. So I would paint the pet, then I would scan it, print it, and that created a lot of extra work. So I sort of shifted away from printing my artwork and making copies. For me, it was just sort of a workflow thing. Honestly, Etsy has been pretty easy so far in terms of the systems. It's been very intuitive. So I haven't really had any specific issues with Etsy so far.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to hear. Are there any particular resources outside of the Etsy platform that you found particularly helpful?
So I love the resources that a woman who runs a company called Easy Sunday Club creates. Her name is Kathy. and she has a YouTube channel called Easy Sunday Club where she teaches a lot of makers and artists how to sell their products. That has been so helpful. She helps me buy a lot of the materials that I have in my studio, the printer that I use, the scanner that I use, the paper cutter that I use. It's been a really great resource. So Easy Sunday Club for any artists.
And is
who
it
are,
Easy, EASY?
Yes, Easy Sunday Club. Yes.
Okay, and it's a YouTube channel.
YouTube channel, and she also sells products herself, but she's also offering a lot of resources on YouTube for makers. I also really enjoy a group called Makers Business Yearbook. And she creates a planner for Etsy sellers that has been really helpful as well.
And is she on YouTube also?
I don't know if she's on YouTube. She's definitely on Instagram, a Maker's Business Toolkit, and she sells a product called the Maker's Yearbook, which has been really helpful.
So can we find her we'll find her on Instagram, or if I go look for her so I can link to her so folks can check her out. Should I look for her on Instagram?
Yes, I think if you search Maker's Toolkit on Instagram, that should
so Maker's Toolkit. I will hunt
Maker's
her down.
Business Toolkit. Yeah.
Maker's Business Toolkit.
Yeah.
Okay. I will hunt her down and put links to wherever I find her so folks can go check her out. Oh, that's really great. I'm not familiar with either of those resources, so I am happy to link to those and hopefully they'll help some other people out too. I was going to ask you another question and it just slipped my mind. What do you envision for Rhoda and Dot going forward?
Yeah, so I want to continue painting my pet portraits. I would love to expand into one more product this year that's a little bit less custom. So perhaps like a mini pet portrait that takes a little bit less work. I'd like to create a calendar, as I mentioned before, trying to keep it small and manageable, and just focus on my primary product for the time being.
Okay. And actually what you said just reminded me of what I wanted to ask, but you answered it already. I was going to ask if you had any plans or any desire even to scale beyond a one-woman operation.
Not at the moment.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Are there any sellers or any artists in the community that you found that you would like to just give a special mention to? They can be on Etsy or off Etsy. It doesn't matter. I will link to whomever you mention.
Sure. Well, so I told you too early, I guess, because I really love Kathy from Easy Sunday Club, who I mentioned just before.
Sure, I'm linking to her.
Yeah, she's just so fabulous, and she's been very supportive and a wonderful mentor. So definitely Kathy from Easy Sunday Club is somebody that's been really helpful for me so far.
Okay, great. Is she on Etsy at all, or she just serves the maker community at large?
I don't actually know if she has ever sold on Etsy before. Or
how did you find her?
No, she is on Etsy.
Okay.
Easy Sunday Club.
Okay. And did you just find her on YouTube? Is that where you first discovered her?
Yes, I found her on YouTube, and she was creating videos about setting up a home stationery business, a home art printing business, and she and her husband provide these very accessible and easy to follow tutorials on setting up your home art business.
Okay, wonderful. I like it. What advice would you give to that seller who is in a similar situation to you, they're at a point where they're ready to maybe step out from what feels safe and do something that they really have a passion for, what would you tell that person right now?
Yeah. I think to trust yourself and remember that there's a real power in practice, in doing something over and over again and getting better. I think especially with art and anything creative, it's so easy to stop before you really get going and say, I can't do this. I think that Etsy is a really great platform for pretty much anybody to sell something that they've created, and it's really easy to get started. But I think you have to have that trust and belief in yourself to sort of treat it as a practice that you continue to do and not to get discouraged. Because I know for me, if I had felt like, I'm not sure I can do this. I don't know how good I am. I don't know if people will be interested. I think just moving past that beginning point and really just trusting yourself, and believing that, that being an artist is not like you don't wake up one day and you're an artist.
Yes.
I kind of felt, there's that, as we talked about, the imposter syndrome of like, am I good enough? So I would encourage anybody who wants to take the leap to remember that you're probably never going to be as good as you wish you were.
Yeah.
But that there's no, there's only gain in continuing to try and to practice and repeat. Enough to the point where you begin to improve significantly. So just keep pushing and give it a shot, because there's you'll never know unless you give it a shot.
I love what you just said. I don't know if you even heard yourself, but you said you're probably never going to be as good as you wish you were.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because, going back to the imposter syndrome, but also I think that holds us back from persisting, is
Totally.
when we don't see or feel the progress that we think we should have made.
Right.
We give up because we think we should be better. And that's so... I love that you said that, because I think that just speaks volumes to how new sellers feel. Even
right.
veteran sellers too. I think everybody struggles sometimes with not feeling like they have or will ever arrive. Yes.
Well, I mean, everyone does, everywhere, in every field, at any level of life. You feel like you're not good enough. And it's true what they say, that comparison is the thief of joy. So I made the decision very early on, especially with Etsy, to very minimally look at my competition, or others who are doing a similar thing to me, because you're never going to be someone else. And when you're working in like a handmade art sort of community, there is no objective like better or best or even good. It's really just about trusting what you think is good and what you're doing. And I think that's really important. It's like, you're never going to be the best, because when we're working in creative fields, there is no best.
Yes, there is no best.
Right.
Shoshana, you're just like giving me all the best quotes.
Oh.
I'm like, I'll go make a printable of that quote. No, I'm kidding. I won't. But it means a lot. Yeah. Shoshana, what's the best way folks can connect with you if they want to continue the conversation, or maybe even have you create a custom pet portrait, because I know many of us have pets out there.
Yeah. So, you can find me on Instagram at Rhoda and Dot Studio. That's RHODAAND .studio. On Facebook at Rhoda and Dot Studio. You can certainly email me at Shoshana at rhodaanddot.com, and on Etsy at Rhoda and Dot Studio.
Okay. Wonderful. I will have links to everywhere that you can connect with Shoshana, and so you can get in touch with her and reach out to her, and I so enjoyed this conversation. I like the freshness of talking to you, because this is, I feel like it's still very much a living, breathing, growing thing. And I like that you're still
I'm
trying
still
to figure.
figuring out what the hell I'm doing.
Yes. And that's always an interesting stage, because on the one hand it's exciting for you, but I would imagine a bit scary too, because you're like, well, what will work and what won't? What will waste time and what won't?
Right. And the only way to figure it out is just give it a shot.
Just do it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. I'm so glad to have had you on the podcast, and I would love to catch up with you and see what you did eventually do, like maybe a year from now, and
let's do
where
it.
Rhoda and Dot is.
Totally.
Okay. And just shout out to your grandmas. I know that's who Rhoda and Dot Studio is named after.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Shoshana. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back with another episode next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.